Welcome back to the NFL Week 13 playoff predictions. And before we get started, I want to ask everyone who is watching this video to subscribe to the channel. We will have playoff predictions videos coming out weekly for the next 5 weeks, counting down to the NFL playoff. We will also have a number of college football videos coming out, so please hit that subscribe button below and let's get into the biggest matchups of week 13. If you want some further analysis on these games, please, in the top right, click on the betting locks and predictions for this week in the NFL. But let's get started with the Bills winning on the road at the Patriots. We then have the Eagles narrowly beating the Titans in that one. Then we have the 49ers beating the Dolphins and the Bengals beating the Chiefs as the underdog. Then the Raiders, we have beating the Chargers as the slight underdog there. And finally, we've got Washington beating contender Giants on the road in that one. And the Vikings beating the current 7 seed Jets, which puts Minnesota at the 2 seed and the Jets at the 7 seed in the AFC. Moving on to week 14, we have a few notable matchups with the Bills winning at home against the Jets, getting their revenge on them there. Then the Bengals beat the Browns at home. Eagles go to New York and beat the Giants on the road. The 49ers knock out another Florida team in the Buccaneers at home. And a bunch of teams are on bye this week, but our final matchup is the Chargers beating the Dolphins. So let's look at what the playoff picture would be in this scenario. We've got number 1 seed 12-1 Philadelphia. Attempting to keep chase is Minnesota, but they suffer a crippling upset to the Lions on the road in that tough divisional game. San Francisco stays in the lead in the division, but the Seahawks are close behind with their home win over the Panthers. Tampa Bay at 6-7 still leads their division, and surprising, Washington team is on the bye, but they are 8-5. Dallas wins against the Texans in that Texas matchup. They move to 9-4. We've got the two-way tie at first with Buffalo and Kansas City after Kansas City's loss last week. So Buffalo's tiebreaker reigns supreme there. But the Ravens are in the 3rd seed with a record of 9-4. They win against the Steelers. Tennessee jumps up to the 4th seed with an 8-5 record. They beat the Jags at home, with Cincinnati, Miami, and Los Angeles being the wild card teams. Let's move to week 15, where we have the Niners losing on the road in the Thursday night football matchup in a tough road environment in Seattle. This evens up the divisional race. You can see that San Francisco still holds the tiebreaker in the division, but both teams are 9-5, and they have been 1-1 against each other. San Francisco is just better because of their divisional record at the time. Buffalo beats the Dolphins at home, avenging another divisional loss there. Cleveland gets the win at home against Baltimore, but Baltimore at 9-5 still stays in the 3rd seed slot there. Tennessee loses on the road against the Chargers. That evens up their record, but the Chargers still stay at the 6th seed because they are not a division winner at this point. In the NFC, Philadelphia holds strong at 13-1, jumping down to the 4th seed. Tampa Bay evens up their record with the home win over the Bengals, who are now 9-5, still at that 5th seed, but that loss is not great for their divisional hopes, especially in a week when Baltimore also we have losing that game. Let's move on to week 16, where we have a little shakeup in the NFC East. This does not end up affecting Philadelphia, at least for now, because the Dallas Cowboys do beat them, but Philadelphia won the first time. They still are 2 games above them with just 2 losses. Dallas has 4. Elsewhere around the league, we have Minnesota beating the Giants, effectively ending their playoff hopes there. Tampa Bay goes on the road and loses to a tough Cardinals team. We've got Miami maintaining their 7 seed, beating the Packers, and the Niners beat contender Washington to separate the 2 teams there. In addition, Seattle stays at 9-6, so there's no movement between Washington and Seattle there, as Seattle also loses to AFC 2 seed Kansas City in there. So let's move on to the penultimate week 17 and some good matchups in this one. We've got the Buffalo Bills suffering the loss at Cincinnati, moves Kansas City up to the number 1 overall seed as they take that game lead on them. Cleveland goes on the road to win and send Washington another defeat. So they stay at the 7th seed, but they're just barely hanging on at this point. We've got Minnesota losing again to the Packers, while San Francisco is able to take care of business against the Raiders on the road. Seattle, meanwhile, is able to prevail over the fading Jets at home. The Jets are still the 7th seed, but again, they're quickly fading. Miami goes on the road to New England in a tough road environment. They'll have to establish the run, this game being in dead of winter, but I think they can do it. 10-6, they stay, and they're tied with Cincinnati. Tennessee beats the Cowboys, so Dallas stays at the 5th seed, but the margin gets just a bit tighter there. And finally, Baltimore beats the Steelers at home to maintain their 3rd seed. So let's move on to the final week and the final playoff picture. And we've got some different teams from last time. We snuck the Falcons in, a little bit of Raiders in last week's video, but this time we've got 7 seed Los Angeles. They hold on against Denver, who really doesn't have much to play for. Kansas City has to win against the Raiders to maintain their 1st seed, so the Raiders lose that one. If the Raiders won this week and the Chargers lost, the Raiders would have been the 7th seed, but there's a lot of teams that could have been the case for. Cleveland wins on the road at the Steelers, but that's not enough to get it done for them. Philadelphia had a game to lose, so we give New York the win for them, but 7th seed Washington prevails against a Dallas team that could also afford to lose the game mathematically, even though the Seahawks prevail to keep Washington off their tail against the Rams. Miami beats the Jets to keep the chase on for Cincinnati, but we have Cincinnati winning, and this would set up a direct rematch the next week as Baltimore wins the divisional title. So this one would go back to Baltimore, and we'd get a rematch the very next week in the 4-5 matchup. Tennessee, again, is the 3 here, beating the Jags on the road, although I could see them losing that one, sending Baltimore back up to the 3 seed. And Tampa Bay finishes off the NFC South as they had already clinched the division, so they lose, and we give the Saints the win there, but they are unable to make the playoffs. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your predictions below.